I don't know that the Blue Jackets win over the Canadiens was a good game necessarily, but it sure was a fun game. And as a bonus, no one else got injured. We're going to talk about that game, and we're going to be looking ahead to tonight's game against Detroit on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to bring you news, stories, game recaps, game previews, excitement, bad news, good news, all of the above, and more about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. Has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before, because BetOnline is where the game starts. And I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jacket is free and available on all podcast platforms and also over on YouTube. So if you haven't hit subscribe over there yet, then feel free to do so. It helps me out. It helps you out. Everybody wins. And we love a win-win situation here at Locked On Blue Jackets. And we especially love that when the Blue Jackets actually win a game. They're actually 3-0-1 in their last 4 games, which is very exciting. They've got points in 4 straight, and sometimes it's not going to be a perfect game, but you win anyway. And that's kind of the story of this game against the Canadiens. Blue Jackets win 6-4 in a questionable game, I think. The game itself was a lot of fun. The game itself was also terrible. Like there was not a lot of good hockey being played. It was kind of a mess from start to finish. The Blue Jackets just came out on top. Cole Sillinger opens the scoring, technically Jordan Harris opens the scoring. Cole Sillinger shoots from a distance. It bounces off of Sam Montembeault, the goalie, off of Jordan Harris and into the net. But hey, it still counts. Gus Nyquist also scores in the first period. He again continues to be just a really good depth guy. Honestly, it's his 3rd of the season, first point of the year for Gavin Bayreuther. Igor Chinikov, who was kind of quieting down a little bit, has his 7th assist, and the Blue Jackets are up 2-0 to start the second period, which is something that hasn't happened a lot in these in this 15 16 games to start the season. Unfortunately, it doesn't stay like that. Jordan Harris scores in the right net this time, his first of the season. That might be his first goal as a Hab, honestly, because again, the Blue Jackets love to do that. And then who else? Josh Anderson scores on the power play to make it 2-2 with literally 3 seconds left in the second period. And I'm starting to get kind of a bad feeling about what's going on. I've seen this before, didn't like it then, don't like it now. And then, of course, the third period is where everything happens. Boone Jenner scores his 7th of the season. He's leading the team because, of course, he is. That's his 5th goal in the last 4 games. When you're hot, you're hot. And again, Ken Johnson, Johnny Gaudreau have got some real interesting chemistry happening there. I extremely would not hate if that was the top line until Patrick Laine came back. I think Jenner centering Gaudreau and Johnson could be a lot of fun. I think Johnson's really good. I think Jenner's really going to reap those rewards of having those 2 guys on his line, frankly, as we've seen in this game where he scored. I believe it was just what a pass from Johnson to Gaudreau and then to Boone Jenner, who basically had a wide open net to put it in. I would like to see that play 3 times a game for the rest of the season, please. And it's 3-2. The Habs score to make it 3-3 with about 10.5 minutes left. And I'm like, man, this feels like an overtime game. This feels like a shootout game. Like, I don't know what's going on. And then everything kind of happens after that. At 10:09, Sean Kuraly scores. At 11:09, Mathieu Olivier scores his first as a Blue Jacket. Sean Kuraly has a 3-point night on the way, 2 goals and an assist. Really good game for him. But it's 5-3 with 9 minutes left. And then 8 seconds later, Nick Suzuki scores his 11th of the season to make it 5-4. And again, I'm like, is this what it's going to be like for the rest of the game? Just every 13 or 11 to every 8 seconds, there's going to be a new game. I don't like that. Or there's going to be a new goal. Excuse me. Luckily, that isn't the case. Sean Kuraly scores an empty netter at 17:47 to basically put the game on ice. It turns into kind of a little bit of a comedy of errors at the end with the Blue Jackets just trying everything to get possession of the puck, and everything is failing. But they also managed to stop the Habs from scoring. Final score 6-4. Messy game. Messy game. But the Blue Jackets get the win, so I can't be too angry about it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the game in a little bit more detail in just a minute. But first, I've got to tell you about BetOnline. Because it is your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. They've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, and if you listen to Locked On Blue Jackets, I'm going to assume that you love sports podcasts. You can find those at BetOnline as well. They are the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So if you want to put some money on the Blue Jackets extending their win streak tonight against Detroit, you can do that. All you have to do is go to betonline.net on your laptop or mobile device to learn more about the trends and action, because BetOnline is where the game starts. And I want to thank everyone again for making Locked On Blue Jackets your first listen of the day every day. Please go and make your second listen of the day Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights that only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today is available on this app, on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. So, like I said, messy game, fun game. There are some good things we can take out of it. I thought Jonas Korpisalo was phenomenal. He faced 42 shots and allowed 4 goals, so just over a 900 save percentage. I think it's like a 909 or something like that. It is a 905, which, again, for the Blue Jackets, who have been struggling with goaltending for much of the season, like, I will take a 905 goaltending, especially, 42 shots on goal is not ideal necessarily, but again, it feels I just get the feeling that that's how it's going to go until they get at least one more defenseman back. Obviously, losing Jake Bean, who's out, quote, for a while. This is, for better or worse, this is the defensive lineup that the Blue Jackets are going to roll with for the near future. In terms of defensive notes, though, I will say David Jiricek scored both his first and his second professional goals with the Monsters last night in a huge win against the Laval Rocket. So, baby Blue Jackets beating the baby Habs, big Blue Jackets beating the big Habs. Or rough night, rough couple of days for Montreal versus Ohio-based sports teams. Blue Jackets got their face-off percentage back on the right side of 50%. I think basically everyone had a decent game. Sean Kuraly was at 52%. Cole Sillinger was at 50%. Boone Jenner was at 60%. Rostovic continues to struggle a little bit at 40%, but it balances out, in my opinion. Penalty kill was fine. Power play continues to struggle. You know how it is. They only actually got one power play opportunity. I believe there was offsetting minors as well, but apart from that, just not a lot going on for Blue Jackets in terms of their power play, and they actually ended up giving up a 5-on-3. So did they allow a goal in the 5-on-3? I don't believe so, but that is No, excuse me, it wasn't even a 5-on-3. It was they killed the penalty and then immediately took another penalty as the first guy was stepping out of the box because I guess 4 minutes of 5-on-4 is fine. In fairness, the penalty kill continues to be okay. They allowed one power play goal on those opportunities, but I would like a power play goal at some point. I know they had one against Philadelphia, but I would like another one, please. Maybe they'll get one tonight against Detroit. We're going to talk about Detroit in just a minute. I haven't given out a Cannonball of the game in so long. I need to go back and figure out who's getting cannonballs because I want to do, 82 or, as many as I can, depending on how many goals the Blue Jackets score. My Cannonball of the game for this game has got to be Boone Jenner, but not because of the goal necessarily, but because of the kind of the tic-tac-toe play that preceded it. Gaudreau to Johnson to Jenner in the net, just a really, really fun goal that makes me excited for Johnson and Gaudreau to click. And they spent most of the third period on the same line, I believe. I like Bemstrom up there, but clearly something wasn't working out. Brad Larson switched it up, ended up with Johnson on that top line, and I extremely do not hate it. I hope to see it in tonight's game against Detroit. And like I said, I liked Korpisalo a lot. I thought Sean Kuraly had a really good game. Like I said, 2 goals and an assist for him. That fourth line is doing things. Obviously, Mathieu Olivier got a goal as well. And from the looks of it, everyone's getting a decent amount of ice time. Václav Gavrikov continues to lead the way with over 25 minutes of ice time, but you look at Marcus Bjork, who's getting 18 and a half minutes. He was quarterbacking the first power play unit, and it's his third NHL game. I really liked his play. And in a game where there were a bajillion goals, he ended up being +1 on the night, which is, you can't complain about that, I don't think. Somehow Eric Branson ended up being a +3 on the night. He also got 2 assists. So shout out to Eric Branson for being an offensive dynamo. He also played a bunch. He played 25 minutes, 57 minutes, which it's at 2 seconds more than Gavrikov. So he was actually leading the team in ice time, which seems fine and sustainable. But shout out to Eric Branson for his 2 assist night. I didn't hate him on the night. I thought he was fine. Like I said, he was a +3, 2 assists, played a million minutes, killed some penalties. Seems unobjectionable is probably what I'll say about it. In a minute, we're going to take a look at Detroit because the Blue Jackets playing them tonight for the first time this season. Detroit is kind of a weird team this season, so we're going to talk about that in just a minute. That's coming up next on Locked On Blue Jackets. So let's talk about the Detroit Red Wings, who just curb stomped the Sharks 7-4. They are, like I said, a weird team. They're 8-5-4 at the minute, so they're playing just under 500 hockey. And the guys that are succeeding for them right now are not necessarily guys that you would expect. David Perron has 6 points in his last 5 games for them. Their leading scorer in the last 5 games is Filip Hronek, who has 2 goals in his last 5 games. Sometimes the offense just doesn't come. Dominik Kubalik is currently leading them with 8 goals in 17 games and 20 points. He's leading them in all categories, actually, which, sure, I guess. Like, that's not the guy that I would pick to be leading the team. The goaltending is, again, fine. Ville Husso came over from St. Louis. Alex Nedeljkovic has been struggling this season, so it looks like for better or worse, Ville Husso is the starter. He's 6-2-3. He's got a 9-12 with 2 shutouts. And generally speaking, the team is performing, I think. I called them a weird team earlier, but I think they are basically performing to expectations, just not quite in the way that people were expecting. They're very much a middling a middling team. I don't think they're playoff bound. I think they're currently in a wild card spot, but I don't expect them to make the playoffs, frankly. But they have taken a step forward after last season. They seem to be heading in the right direction. They have better stats than the Blue Jackets in basically every category, which again makes sense because of the Blue Jackets' struggles so far this season. Power play is only 25th in the league, but is still almost double what the Blue Jackets is at 18.8 versus the Blue Jackets 10.3%. The penalty kill is 15th in the league. They are 29th in faceoffs. The Blue Jackets win that one. They're at 17th in the league with 50.2. They are 16th in goals for per game and 19th in goals against per game. So a lot of stats that are kind of, like I say, middling, average-ish, between 10 and 20th in the league, which is kind of what I expect from the Red Wings. And it could be an interesting game. I am expecting defense optional, good goaltending, I think. So it could really go either way. I'm expecting actually Daniil Tarasov might be starting this game because the Blue Jackets are facing the Florida Panthers next, who in fairness are below the Red Wings in the standings. But if they were going to start Tarasov for one of these games, I would personally start him for tonight's game and play Korpisalo against Florida. But they might play Korpisalo for both games. Who knows? That feels like a thing that Brad Larson might decide to do. Korpisalo, in general, is looking pretty good this season. He's at a 909 save percentage, and I believe has all but like 3 of the Blue Jackets. He's 3-1-1 to start the season. So best Blue Jackets goalie by far. Elvis Merzlikins is going to be out for a couple of weeks. I believe he tweaked his knee in the Flyers game last week, so or earlier this week, excuse me. So not expect to see him for a while. So yeah, it's going to be Tarasov. I assume it's going to be Tarasov for one of these 2 games. Who's going to say which game it is? Probably I will finish recording and then they will post on Twitter about which goalie is starting. But I would expect, honestly, my instinct is that Korpisalo starts both games. But if they're going to start Tarasov for one of these games, I would expect it to be tonight. So they might get to see Tarasov. The good thing about the Blue Jackets being kind of at the bottom of the standings means that they get a lot of backup goalies. So the Blue Jackets might end up facing Alex Nedeljkovic, who I don't think has performed super well against the Blue Jackets in the past, historically speaking. Ohio-born kid, which is fun. So they might get to face him instead of Ville Husso. Nedeljkovic is currently 2-3-1 and has a save percentage of 873. So I know which goalie I would rather face. However, the Blue Jackets do have a habit of making underperforming goalies look like Vezina candidates. So I really have no idea. In terms of predictions, I'm going to say that this is going to be a 4-2 win for the Blue Jackets. And I think the scoring is going to be opened by... my money's on Johnny Gaudreau. Johnny Gaudreau loves to open the scoring at Nationwide. He still, I believe, hasn't scored a goal away from Nationwide, which is very funny to me. But he has 7 goals on the season, 6 goals on the season, excuse me, and is second on the team. So I would expect him to score tonight. Frankly, that's what I've got my money on. So Johnny Gaudreau to open the scoring, 4-2 Blue Jackets win. That is what I am predicting. And that's kind of all I've got for you today. Tomorrow, we're going to do another special weekend episode. We're going to break down tonight's game and look ahead to the Panthers game tomorrow night. Thank you for listening. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and also over on YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed yet, then please feel free to do so. And now that you've made Locked On Blue Jackets your first listen, for your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the podcast at LO_Blue Jacket. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. we'll probably do a mailbag on Monday to cover these 2 games and other things. So if you want to send questions for that, you can do that at that email address. You can drop them in the YouTube comments. You can DM the show's Twitter. You can at me or the show on Twitter. So send your questions in. And until tomorrow, enjoy the game and make sure you stay locked on.